Hello, everyone, and welcome to our digital screening for endometriosis and painful sex. Today, we're going to be showcasing 6 digital stories about loss, hope, resilience, followed by a panel discussion with our storytellers. We would like to start this event by acknowledging and expressing our gratitude to the lands from which these digital stories were made possible. From the Pacific to the Atlantic to Arctic coast of Canada, we respectfully acknowledge the traditional territories of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people that have called this land home for generations. Please take a moment to reflect on the traditional lands where you are situated on. My name is Lan Randawa, and I'll be your host for today. I'm an emergency medical call taker and dispatcher for BC Ambulance, and I've recently joined the Patient Research Advisory Board for the Endometriosis and Pelvic Pain Laboratory at UBC. I'm very passionate about using my personal experience with endometriosis and adenomyosis and pelvic pain to further research and innovations to help others suffering with these diseases. I was recently able to do this by presenting our newly developed website at the World Endometriosis Conference. We'll share that later. And I also sit on the Data Access Committee, which assists in approving research studies requests to patient data, as well as determining the benefits the study has for the endometriosis community. And since April, I've been honored to be a part of the EndoAct Canada, where I'm a part of their advocacy and communications team, helping them with their mission to drive policy action on endometriosis in Canada. Like many of my fellow storytellers, I've been experiencing debilitating pain since my first period. After being ignored by many physicians, I was finally diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis. And after an unsuccessful excision surgery, I finally had to make the choice to have a partial hysterectomy in 2019. Since then, I'm grateful to have been able to enjoy living a relatively pain-free life with my husband and 2 beautiful dogs while we anxiously await our adopted children to join our family. These digital stories that you're about to view do contain accounts of sex, fertility, trauma, and pain that may elicit strong emotions. So please view these stories at your own discretion and contact your local crisis line for emotional support or to find mental health resources near you. We've listed the phone number for the BC Mental Health Line and the Pain Support Line. Please also note that the contents discussed during this event shouldn't be taken as direct medical advice. The purpose of this event is to describe the unique experiences of people living with endometriosis. Before viewing the individual stories, we'd like to share a short film created in collaboration with A Little Wolf Productions, and this film serves as a teaser to these digital stories.
I'm a sister.
I am a mother.
I'm a friend.
Sometimes it feels like life.
Feels like lightning. Burns like fire. Other times, like I'm drowning. And no one can hear me. Like I'm broken.
But I know
I am resilient. I am a fighter. Even when the sky seems dark,
Somewhere, there are stars alight.
I'm not my pain. am not my disease. I am not alone.
I am not alone.
Not alone.
So let's move to our first story by Roop Basara. From Vancouver, BC, Roop has a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, and from UNBC, a Bachelor of Science in a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from UNBC and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from BCIT. Roop has worked in general surgery at BGH, as well as an OR surgical nurse at the Dermatologic Surgery Center. He was put on the birth control pill at the age of 11, and Roop wasn't officially diagnosed Roop wasn't officially diagnosed with stage 2 endometriosis until 2013. The 3 surgeries later, she was diagnosed with stage 4 deep infiltrating endometriosis and adenomyosis. These illnesses, a chronic back condition, and 4 surgeries have currently left Roop unable to work as an RN. However, she does try to work on raising awareness and educating others about endometriosis through Endo in the 604, a social media platform she started. Living with chronic illnesses isn't easy, but Roop tries her best to enjoy her days off with her husband and her fur baby.
I sat in the exam room, nervously waiting for the doctor to speak. He looked up from reading my file and said, "Everything's fine. There was barely any endometriosis in there, so you should have no problem getting pregnant." That was 5 years ago. I was 32 and had just had my second surgery for endometriosis. I went off the birth control pill with hopes of having a child, but instead I lived through some of the most painful years of my life. I dreamed of having 4 kids, and as much as I wanted to get pregnant, I started dreading sex. My husband was very aware of my situation, but it just hurt so much. Not just during, but afterwards too. Sharp cramps and shooting pains would continue for days. Each month I hoped I was pregnant, as that was the goal, of course, but it would also mean that I could stop having painful sex. There were times I just couldn't engage because I was in so much agony. Then I would feel guilty for being the reason optimal days of fertility were being wasted, so I would try to push through. A few times my period was late, but I never got pregnant. I started feeling like I wasn't good enough, because my body had let me down and couldn't do what it was made to do. For over 7 months I went through this brutal cycle. I was in the ER almost every time my period came, as the pain was too intense for me to manage at home. I wondered, do I really even want to have a kid if this is how my health is going to be? After many doctor's appointments, tests, and exams, I learned that I couldn't get pregnant naturally. I was also diagnosed with adenomyosis, which only further complicated my situation. We stopped trying, and I went back on the pill. At that time, I felt that endometriosis had taken everything away. Work, social life, sex, kids, my mental wellness. After a 3rd surgery, I shared my story on social media to raise awareness. By doing so, I met others like me and felt less alone. Although endometriosis has changed my life in many ways, it has also shown me how to love, respect, and accept myself for all that I am.
I really love your honesty, Ruth. It's just very candid, and I really enjoyed watching your story. Our second story is by Sarah. Sarah's been an endo warrior since the age of 13, but it wasn't until she was 28 and married that she finally received her first diagnosis of deep infiltrating stage 4 endometriosis during her first of 5 related surgeries. It's been a rocky journey since then, including an additional diagnosis of fibromyalgia, the loss of the ability to work a steady job, many different kinds of therapies, IVF losses, and more. She's gained so much along the way, and is incredibly thankful for the handful of solid advocates, the doctors at BC Women's Centre for Pelvic Pain and Endometriosis, and many friends and fellow warriors that she's gotten to know. Sarah's a single mom to one feisty, sweet miracle baby, and her days are mostly consist of trying to keep up with her.
I remember the first time I was validated by a doctor. She said, "I'm so sorry you've suffered for so long." I had waited 16 years for someone to believe me, and I finally had a diagnosis. Stage 4 endometriosis and more. It was incredibly emotional for me. Words are such powerful tools. Fast forward 1 year, a marriage, and 3 surgeries later, I had lost my job, my friends, and felt completely isolated and forgotten. The words I was hearing at this point were much more damaging. I've been cursed with a useless, lazy, barren wife who can't even get out of bed. So many words I could have responded with, but my fight had been taken out of me. I was depleted, weary, and the full weight of those constant hurtful words took an even greater toll. I even thought, maybe those words aren't that wrong. As the years have passed, the treatments and the surgeries have built up, and I've found various levels of help. Talking about it has changed my relationship and brought some healing. Still, I crave the intimacy with my husband that is severely missing. My therapists have offered words as goals. In a few months, you'll feel differently. Or just try this. Or you'll be able to enjoy sex one day, just keep trying. But time after time, they're only words, and I'm still left wanting more. My own words have changed too. I used to feel adventurous, confident, sexy, and independent. But now I feel like pain, lonely, untouched, and depressed describe me better. The pendulum continues to swing between hope and despair. I've given my body and life savings to fertility treatments, and after multiple losses, surgeries, and more pain, I was finally able to add my most treasured word to the list: Mama. But now it seems that my words asking for help are discounted, because if I can have a child, I must be able to function and have a good sex life, right? Wrong. As I reflect on my experiences, I continue to cling to the hope that someday I'll find someone, whether they're a doctor, therapist, or surgeon, makes no difference to me. But I have to believe that someone exists who will be able to fix my pain, to bring the restoration my body and soul so desperately crave. Someone who can offer more than just words.
Again, such a beautiful story. I've had the pleasure of seeing her sleeping child when she wasn't a wild thing running around, but I'm so happy for you, Sarah, and I am really honored to get to have watched you create your story. Next we have is Lauren Gelfer. Lauren is an endometriosis warrior and a patient advocate who's passionate about raising awareness and fighting back against this devastating disease. Lauren's also a therapist who sees a wide variety of clients, but particularly enjoys working with folks who have endometriosis and/or chronic pelvic pain. When Lauren's not working or volunteering, she spends most of her spare time walking in the forest with her dog, husband, and friends, and enjoys experimenting in the kitchen and cooking for her loved ones.
I feel like I have a million cobwebs spreading throughout my pelvis, pulling, squeezing, and moving my organs in all the wrong directions. Sometimes it's hard to get a deep breath in. I have to visualize expanding these cobwebs and ripping them apart. I've had painful periods since I was 12. I was put on prescription medication then because I was in agony, but was told, period pain is normal. It's just something you'll have to get used to. I started the birth control pill at 15 to help control my heavy periods, but came off of it temporarily when I was 23, as I was going traveling for an extended time. May 2011. I wake up in a hostel in New Zealand, feeling excruciating pain in the right side of my pelvis, into the right side of my back, and into my diaphragm. It turns out that I have a dermoid cyst on my right ovary the size of a baseball. It has been forming since birth, twisting my right fallopian tube. I get emergency surgery to remove it. I think the pain will be resolved, but it is only just the beginning. The pain continues to evolve. I have no energy. I cannot digest anything without bloating like a balloon, and suddenly, sex is excruciatingly painful, like stabbing knives into the opening of my vagina, deep into my pelvis. I am desperate for answers. I go to many specialists, a gastroenterologist, a rheumatologist, an orthopedic surgeon. Each provides me with diagnoses I do not feel align with my symptoms. I do extensive physiotherapy and massage therapy. I see a naturopath, a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and many more holistic practitioners. 3 years after my cyst removal, I get referred to a pelvic pain and endometriosis specialist. I agree to exploratory surgery because I have nothing to lose. November 2014. I wake up in the hospital, groggy and confused. The surgeon says, "I found it. Endometriosis all on the right side of your pelvis, exactly where you have been feeling pain." This is the true beginning of my journey. It takes 6 more years before I begin to trust my body and its messages, before I thank it for speaking to me through the pain, before I learn that penetrative sex does not define intimacy, before I recognize that chronic pain in and of itself is traumatic, before I begin to heal.
Thank you, Root, Sarah, and Lauren for sharing your stories. And Lauren, again, your story is just another one of the many examples, and you are such a bright light that it's hard to imagine you going through those things. But I am honored to have gotten to see you through this small part of your journey. We've reached the halfway point for the story viewing, and we would like to pause briefly to showcase a new website called Sex, Pain, and Endometriosis. You can access the website by scanning the QR code on your screen or by typing endopain.endometriosis.org into your web browser. This website was created by a team of researchers, patients, and healthcare providers at the Endometriosis and Pelvic Pain Laboratory at the University of British Columbia. On this website, you can find information about endometriosis and painful sex, such as the different types of painful sex, the causes, potential pain management options, and resources for support. Since painful sex is a stigmatized topic, the focus for this website was to highlight that painful sex is a real symptom of endometriosis and that pain can be changed. I really enjoy the neutral diagrams on the website. They are inclusive no matter what your preferences are and give a very clear image of where the pain is for people who menstruate. Also, the diagrams showing what and where endometriosis is are accurate and clear. And for someone who's newly diagnosed, it truly does help to see what is actually happening in your body when you're experiencing this pain. In the resource section of the website, you can find links to local community networks, books, podcasts, and tips for better sex. So now we're going to show a few more stories from our lovely storytellers. The next story is by Jessica Sutherland. Jessica grew up in a small fishing village on the Sunshine Coast before moving to Vancouver for university. In 2014, she was diagnosed with endometriosis through the BC Women's Centre for Pelvic Pain and Endometriosis. And since she has become a member of the Patient Research Advisory Board for the Endometriosis Pelvic Pain Laboratory at UBC, where she provides a patient perspective to guide endometriosis research. In her free time, she enjoys petting cats, hiking with her husband, and creating tasty vegan meals.
Growing up, I loved reading romance novels and dreamt about being swept off my feet. I wasn't exactly sure how that would happen, but I knew that sex was a part of the story. I was told, your first time might hurt a little, but that's normal. That didn't sound so bad. I was used to pain, having bled heavily for at least a week every month since I was 13. Besides, I'd read that sex was magical. It's like fireworks. The first time I had sex, I was 19. It was snowing and I was pressed against a glass door. This wasn't at all what I'd imagined. Then there was the pain. Sharp, jagged explosions. Red and gold when I closed my eyes, kind of like fireworks. I wondered, am I doing something wrong? But was too embarrassed to ask. So instead, I watched the snow falling on the bare trees, the flickering of neighbors' TV screens. The next day in school, I couldn't sit down. Dating was a challenge. At what point do you tell your date that sex hurts? Most of the time, I didn't. So I was called a tease, told, you're so cold, you're an ice princess. An inner voice whispered, you're worthless. Eventually, I stopped reading romance novels. In my late 20s, I was referred to a pelvic pain specialist. She asked if I'd ever experienced painful sex. No one had ever asked me that before. Crying, I said yes. She told me that many other people experience this too. It was such a relief to know that I was not alone. By that point, I'd begun to accept that the pain was an unchangeable part of me. I no longer dreamt of being swept away. I had loving friends and family. Wasn't that enough? Then I met someone. We spent the whole night talking. While the sun was rising, I looked out over the ocean and realized, darn, I'm just beginning to enjoy being single, and now we're going to start dating. I must have spoken out loud because half asleep he responded, no, sweetheart, you don't have to date me. That was 8 years ago, and we just celebrated our first wedding anniversary. Since then, I've been diagnosed with endometriosis. Sometimes sex is pain-free. And even though life isn't anything like a romance novel, sometimes I see fireworks.
I just love Jessica's vulnerability in her story, and her voice just presents it so beautifully that you forget that you're not just listening to some beautiful poet speak amazing words. I loved it. Our next story is Edurne. And Edurne is defined by her curiosity to discover and learn, a warm soul that can be found in far off places, manifested in messy hair and howling laughter under full moons. She had been battling an invisible condition since the age of 12. It was not until her 32nd birthday that she discovered this invisible illness had a name: stage 2 endometriosis with deep infiltration on her left ovary. Even if the path has been rocky for her, she is immensely grateful for her loved ones and the doctors at BC Women's Centre for Pelvic Pain and Endometriosis who have helped her gather the strength to keep walking the path.
Today is November 18. I'm fast asleep. It is 3 a.m. now, and the pain starts hitting me so intensely that it wakes me up. It travels through my right leg. It feels numb, like knives stabbing me. I need to call in sick. I can't make it to work. I pick up my phone, and in between of the screams of my uterus, I leave a voicemail. I need to take painkillers. They will put me asleep, numb my physical pain, and I will forget about the emotional pain. They say it's invisible, but I can feel it all over my body. Nothing can ease the pain, and in my head, I'm running through everything I'm missing out. Not area of my life has been untouched. Now I feel grateful for those who listen to me, support me, and embrace me. This is how it feels to have endometriosis.
Darnea is such a beautiful soul, and I love her video. It's so creative and beautiful. The last digital story that we have today is one that I created. I've already introduced myself, so we'll just go ahead and start the video. Today is a fight. Today is pain. Today is for healing. I sit curled up in as tight of a ball as my muscles can manage. Waves of pain ripple down my back, radiating through my hips and pelvis. I close my eyes. I see war. I see fire. Listening to the rain, wanting it to wash over my soul, and begging it to cleanse this battlefield inside me. Someone please, come save me from this fight. I long to be laying here, with life growing inside me, hearing the rain fall, introducing them to the sounds of our world, but my heart breaks, knowing my uterus is a war zone, and one they won't survive. This pain feels empty. I am empty. I am a vacuum, an endless void of suffering, a wasteland without life, unable to nurture or grow. I wander in this wasteland searching for hope, praying I find answers that I can drink in and bring me back to life. I awake in a cold hospital bed, clutching to a piece of paper. I look down, eyes blurry from anesthetic. I tighten my gaze and see endometriosis, found and excised. This tiny piece of crumpled paper, covered in my sweat, with writing that's almost illegible, is the white flag on that battlefield inside me. I close my eyes and I start to feel the rain. I would also like to thank my best friend, Cindy Dyteson, for creating the music that went along with my story. It just perfectly encaptioned how I feel telling that. So thank you, Jessica and Aderne, for sharing your stories. And I want to take a moment to mention that these videos were funded by the 2019 BC Women's Health Research Institute Catalyst Grant and created in collaboration with the University of British Columbia at Story Center. I also want to acknowledge the principal investigators for this project, Dr. Fuchsia Howard and Dr. Paul Young. Now we're going to move to our panel discussion. Our panel discussion will include our storytellers, and we will be joined by Dr. Paul Young. Dr. Paul Young is the research director and a gynecologist at the BC Women's Centre for Pelvic Pain and Endometriosis. And Dr. Young will be answering a few of our discussion questions as well. I'll just give a moment for the panelists to start their videos and their microphones. We can get started. Okay. I think we are all here. Sorry, just a moment. So our first question is for our storytellers, and it's just, what does it feel like to have endometriosis?
So I guess I can go first, since I was one of the last storytellers to go. So being diagnosed with endometriosis was life-changing for me. There's just such a power in finally having a name for what you're experiencing. I mean, you can't see it on screen, but right now I'm wearing pajama pants and I have a heating pad and multiple pillows and a blanket. And I honestly really wish I could be doing this laying in a bath. But today, overall, it's a pretty good day. Like anytime I have an event planned, I was worried that today would be a bad day. One of those days where I'm curled in a ball, where it feels like I have no control over my life. During those flare-ups, I tell myself that I've had bad days before. I've survived every one of them, so I'll get through this too. And so far, I have. Despite this, I try not to let my diagnosis define me, but I know that these symptoms have shaped my life and the person I've become, for good or bad. That I have the opportunity to speak here today to share my story is one of the good things. And to be honest, I'm not sure what more to say. I spent 23 years with the symptoms of endometriosis, and it's hard to remember what life was like before. So when I'm trying to describe what it feels like, it's a challenge because I don't really have anything to compare it to. It's such a part of me that I can only imagine what it's like to live without it.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there anyone else that would like to say what it feels like?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I really resonate with your words, Jessica. It's a difficult condition to live with. It has impacted my life in many different ways. Endometriosis mostly is defined by like the physical symptoms, but for me, the emotional impact that this illness has had in my life has been huge, because most of the times, at least once or twice a month, I'm not able to go to work. I might be missing social events. And when that happens in a constant basis, 1 month after each other, it's really hard to take in. But I have to say that, as Jessica said before, it's a battle that you go through and you become stronger each time. You grow and you learn how to take care of yourself. I like to define endometriosis as an invisible condition because most of the times it feels like the pain hasn't been seen, and most of the times you don't get validated for your experience.
I think we can all agree with that feeling of not being validated. I know for myself, my pain just felt so deep inside me. I couldn't imagine where it was coming from, and it got to the point, and I think very similar to you, Aderne, where I convinced myself that I was crazy because there's nothing that you can see. It's normal to be bleeding, and nobody really talks about the amount. And it just, I think, again, overall, it just feels so isolating. I know that I also had PTSD from my work, and I can confidently say that there were more times when I was in an endometriosis flare up that I wanted and genuinely considered taking my life than I ever did with the trauma that I had from my work. So it's just something that I think we need to talk about more, because there's obviously more people out there that feel like this. So I hope these stories and this discussion can help others. Our next question is just, how do you take care of yourself while living with this chronic condition?
So I'll hop in here. The gift of endo is that it's taught me the importance and actually the art of slowing down. For so many years, I resisted what my body was telling me, and I tried to keep going at the same fast pace as everyone around me. And I found that when I finally began to listen to my body and accept that I needed to take care of myself and honor my unique needs, I began to learn that slowing down wasn't such a terrible thing. So nowadays, I prioritize self-care. I rest when I need to, and I move in a way that brings me joy and doesn't flare up my whole body. I take baths as often as I can. We have that in common, Jessica. And I spend a lot of time in nature, where I find that my nervous system is just a lot more regulated and at ease. The biggest lesson in the 21 years that I've had this disease is to listen to my body and to try to honor what it's asking of me.
Lauren, I totally hear you. And yes, baths are amazing. Over the years, I've made some major dietary, some lifestyle changes. So I became vegan, I added yoga and mindfulness to my routine. But like you were saying, the biggest thing is being kind to yourself. So on my good days, I used to push myself, clean the house, do the errands, go shopping, get groceries, see friends, do all the things, do all my schoolwork, because I never knew where I'd have another good day. And I'd find that the next day I was even more exhausted than usual. It might even take a few days to recover. So spoon theory has been incredibly helpful for me. That's the idea that you only have a certain amount of energy on a given day, like a certain number of spoons. And once you use up all that energy, it takes some time to replenish. So in the morning, when I remember, I try to assess how many spoons of energy I have. So you have to remember that even showering and getting dressed, just basic tasks, they take energy. And some days I don't have the spoons to do that. I do still overdo it some days, but like you, Lauren, I try to go easier on myself. I rest when needed, and I ask for support when I need help.
I'm just going to add to what Lauren and Jessica said. As you guys can see, there really is no simple answer to this question. Just as complex, like as endometriosis is, so is the care that involves to, take care of yourself living with this illness. For myself personally, from like the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, I'm doing various things to manage my symptoms, such as like taking medications, supplements, THC, applying oils and salves, attending various and multiple therapies and appointments, trying to keep up my physical strength while also trying to rest at the same time. And those are just some of the things, I have to do on a daily basis, basically to take care of myself with endometriosis. And then we don't even touch on the mental health aspect of it, which is also so very important. Feelings of anger, grief, guilt, anything like that comes up, basically, it's hard to manage. And those are also things that need to be addressed as well. So I would say basically endometriosis for me is a full-time job, if not more.
Definitely a full-time job. You're not wrong. Another question we were going to ask was, when you first started experiencing painful sex, did you know it was related to your endometriosis? And if not, how long did it take you, or how did you find out that that's what was the cause?
So I had no idea. I wasn't sexually active until I was married, and my partner had more experience than me. He told me it was normal, but that it wouldn't always be painful. But instead of getting better, it got worse. So unfortunately, I attributed my pain to the stress of being in an abusive and unhealthy marriage. I had my first of 3 laparoscopies that first year, and sex became pretty much unbearable after that. A year after I got married, I was finally able to sit in the BC Women's Endometriosis and Pelvic Pain Clinic and speak with a proper specialist. And she asked me, "Do you have painful sex?" It was a light bulb moment for me. Like, maybe it wasn't my fault. I couldn't believe that it was so common that it was on a list to ask patients. I have no idea how long it would have taken me to connect those two things on my own.
Yeah, Sarah, that was the same thing for me. I had no idea. I thought it was just a me thing. I didn't even really realize it was a problem, even though it hurts. And I felt like that was problematic. But looking back on it now, knowing what I know, I feel almost embarrassed how long it took, 10 years. But also, I never brought it up to a medical practitioner because I didn't think to do it. It wasn't until, like I said in my video, someone brought it up to me. And like you were saying, Sarah, and I accepted until then, that's just the way things were and it wasn't changeable. But now I know it is possible to change. So, yeah.
When I first started experiencing painful sex, I was actually diagnosed with provoked vestibulodynia from a general gynecologist, which was really fortunate because I now understand that this usually takes a long time to diagnose. At the time, I was confused, I was frustrated, I was angry with the diagnosis. My mental health was definitely deeply affected. And I just had no idea why I was experiencing it. It just didn't really make any sense to me. But about a year later, that's when I was diagnosed with endometriosis at the BC Women's Clinic. And this is when I learned that painful sex was a symptom of the disease. So then it all started to kind of come together and make more sense.
So funny how we probably all felt so isolated in these feelings, but there were people out there feeling that way. And I was very similar to you, Sarah. I never wasn't sexually intimate before I was married. And you're like, oh, maybe it's normal. I don't know. And it's just like, takes so much longer when you don't know or you weren't educated. So thank you guys for sharing that. I know it's a very vulnerable question, but I know it's going to help a lot of people. This is kind of to follow up on that. How did you start getting help for your painful sex?
Yeah, so fortunately, I found an amazing pelvic floor physiotherapist whose name is Anakin Chadwick, whose clinic, The Cheerful Pelvis, is located on Commercial Drive in Vancouver for anyone who's looking for. I'm just going to name drop because she's really awesome. Anakin helped me understand that I was storing trauma in my body and that I needed to work on regulating my nervous system through mental health somatic therapy, through mindfulness, meditation, and especially spending time in nature. Anakin taught me that although this wouldn't necessarily solve the painful sex, it would help my body feel safer and less activated when I was intimate with my partner. I also started to accept that penetrative sex just wasn't going to happen all the time, and that there were still other ways to be intimate and connect with my husband. When I was able to open my eyes up to this possibility, it really helped me accept that this was something that I could more or less manage.
For me, after I was able to connect that symptom with my endo, I felt more empowered to actually do something about it. I started seeing a pelvic floor physiotherapist, just like Lauren. The first one I saw was at the Pelvic Pain Clinic. at the BC Women's Hospital, but I didn't even know that a pelvic floor physio existed before then. So as part of my treatment, she actually brought in my partner and explained to him why things weren't working well and what he could do differently. He seemed to understand in the moment, but after we left her office, he just wasn't very interested. So I started seeing another pelvic floor physio regularly closer to home to see if I could address things on my own. So she helped me understand my body better and showed me some things that I could do proactively. And then I went through the gamut. So I tried massage, craniosacral massage, acupuncture, Reiki, different medications. I changed my diet. I meditated, did different exercises, got dilators. I went on short-term and long-term disability to manage my pain. And some of those things I found to be really helpful. Others were only helpful after I left my toxic relationship. And some were different based on who I was getting the treatment from. Our bodies are just so different that it's not a simple do this and this will happen. So I would encourage someone to take courage, be your own advocate, and have grace for your body. The most helpful advice I got was from my massage therapist. And she said, instead of hating this part of your body, try visualizing it as a call for help. So visualize sending helpers to that area instead. And it completely changed how I saw my body. And it's really helped me find ways to ease my pain faster.
That's so great. It's amazing that there's so many different ways we can help ourselves, and it's different for everybody. But thank you guys for sharing that. Again, another vulnerable question, but it's very much appreciated. Our next question is for Paul, and just asking the question of who is affected by endometriosis.
Yes, so well, first of all, it's an honor to participate today, and I've learned so much listening to everyone. You really are all an inspiration, so thank you. Endometriosis affects 1 in 10 people, so incredibly common, and associated with symptoms such as painful periods, painful sex, difficulty conceiving, fatigue, other symptoms as well. And I think what we're realizing that these symptoms can be similar, but it can also be quite different amongst different people with endometriosis. And so I think each person has their own unique story in terms of how endometriosis has impacted their lives.
Definitely. Another question for you is, what helps people with endometriosis to talk, like what helps people with endometriosis to talk about painful sex?
Well, at our clinic, we try to basically ask everybody if there's any pain with sexual activity, and hopefully that makes people feel safe that they can discuss the symptom. And I think for the medical field in general, or society, I think it would be helpful if people realize that painful sex is as important a symptom as chest pain or difficulty breathing or any other medical symptom, and it deserves the same attention and care.
That is extremely validating to hear, especially from a doctor. So thank you, Dr. Young. We have another question for our storytellers, and about this process, and how did it feel to create your own digital story?
I guess I will go first. I have so many resistance and doubts on being part of the process. But now that I'm here and seeing all this, it was a fantastic opportunity, especially because I felt listened, validated, and connected to you all. And you all have become part of my support system as well. So I'm immensely grateful for it.
When I actually first started creating my story, I wasn't really sure like how I want to represent or show this part of my life. So when I started putting it together, I felt like I was telling somebody else's story. So it wasn't really until I think I watched the rough draft of it that I was like, whoa, this is my story. And it felt really unreal at that time. So evoked a lot of strong emotions. I felt really sad, but it also, at the same time, I was like, wow, like, look at what you've overcome. So it was really empowering, I feel like, at the same time.
Yeah, for me, getting to tell my story in such a unique way just felt so empowering. I think this is the common theme amongst us storytellers. Yeah, it just helped me to really put all the pieces together, and it just furthered my healing. So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity.
Lauren, you used the word I was going to use. It was so empowering. For me, it was just really healing for me. I was in the process of leaving my relationship and feeling really unsure and really low. So this process was like therapy, in that I was surrounded by others who had experienced my pain in ways that most people don't understand. So I felt really heard and validated. And I think one of the greatest parts for me was being in a place where I could talk about my endo without having to advocate for myself again and put in the effort of fighting to explain and be heard. That exhausting part was already done. So it was really helpful to have the accountability of the regular meetings to look forward to, and also to walk with others in their story process and see just how similar we really were.
Okay. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, but yeah, I think it was I delayed things for mine till the last minute, and we were in one of the meetings where we had to have our scripts ready, and we shared some, and then we had a bathroom break, and I wrote my my script then. So it felt very daunting, because I'm a very open person, but it felt hard to kind of encapsulate the longest and almost worst part of my life. But it, even every time I watch it, it just helps me heal a little bit more. So I'm very thankful that I got this opportunity. What did it feel like for you guys to view other people's stories?
For me, it just felt that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. My co-storytellers shared a lived experience that also drastically impacted their lives and defined who they are today, just like me. And I don't know, I just felt understood and heard just by witnessing their stories. It was just a very, very powerful experience, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the stories, each of them. I've seen my own a lot, but I've seen the other ones 3 or 4 times, and every single time I cry, and I have my Kleenex box here because I need that. But I see elements in every single story that I relate to so deeply. And I feel such a connection to these humans, who most of whom I'd never met before. Here we are, 6 people, different journeys, different perspectives, and I see parts of myself in each of you. It's such a powerful, emotional feeling and connection. And I wonder if we're feeling this way, probably other people with endo would experience similar benefits from something like this, creating a story. And it's been just an incredible experience. It's really, I'm going to cry. Okay.
Yeah, I got you, Jessica. For me, the experience was really, really, really emotional. I cry. Yeah, I cry a lot, but mostly it came from feeling understood and feeling heard and supported, as I say before. It was just a safe container where we were seeing each other in each other's experiences. Yeah, as I said before, I was having many doubts about it, but yeah, I will do it again. And I'm so grateful I have you all in my life right now. So yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, watching the stories again tonight, it was really tough. And each person here shared such an intimate part of their battle with endometriosis. So I really feel like even though we were six strangers, we were brought together by these stories. And yet, even though the stories are different, we all share the same main character, which is endometriosis.
I would have to mirror what's already been said for the most part. This was an incredibly emotional experience for me as well. And the connection was very noticeable to each of these people. It felt like we had walked through our experiences together, even though it had felt so alone in that moment. All of a sudden, we weren't alone anymore. And this, after only just meeting online, it was really hard to watch, though, how other people have also had to suffer so needlessly. And watching them again and again has been so healing for me, but it's also so difficult for me to keep watching just how many times, how many years we've had to wait, how many times we've had to plead and advocate for ourselves. But then you see the other side, and it's so comforting to know that you're not alone, and that feeling that we felt so often.
It was very moving for me to watch the videos for sure. And it made me realize, when seeing somebody with endometriosis in the clinic, it's a great privilege. It's only a 45-minute, say, initial visit, but there's a whole lifetime behind that first visit. It's also made me feel more passionate about the need to do more research and to better understand this condition and to definitely find better treatments.
Thank you, Paul. I remember when you first got to see them and some of the other clinicians, and I'm thankful that you guys were really receptive to it and it was beneficial for you, because I know you guys care so deeply about your patients. And yeah, I want to say thank you to everyone, to Root, Lauren, Jessica, Durnay, Sarah, and Paul. And thank all the storytellers for their vulnerability as you guys created these digital stories. And you didn't have to share them with everyone. It was a choice, and I'm very grateful that you did that. And same with answering your discussion questions and sharing your personal experiences of pain and intimate details that are just so vulnerable. Again, it's not easy, but thank you for voicing these lived experiences of endometriosis and for being the voice that really none of us had while we were going through our journeys. So I am so honored that I get to know you guys and you can be a light for someone that's going through this. Thank you, Paul, for providing your insight as a clinician during our discussion. And sadly, that this concludes the end of our screening event, but thank you for watching. And as I mentioned previously, if you need support, please reach out to Pain BC to find pain specific resources, or the BC Mental Health Line for emotional support. So thank you and take care, everybody.